Good morning and welcome to the Wavy Digital Desk. Today we're focusing on Clear the Shelters. It's a campaign in August run by NBCUniversal Local that is about adopting pets and also donating to rescues and different animal shelters near you. Today we're going to be speaking with Go Rescue Pet Adoption Center, which is right in Norfolk, and we are going to hear more about what they do and some of the difficulties right now in terms of adoptions, in terms of having enough space for animals and giving donations. So thank you so much, Georgia, for coming in today.
Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, and I just think it's so important all the time. I'm glad this month at least gives, the floor to you all to talk about some of these issues. But before we get started and, what you're seeing right now, can you just tell us what your organization, what the company is?
Well, in general, it was an accident. I started doing rescue while I was a photographer, and then when the economy tanked in 2009, 2010, when everybody was losing their minds, losing everything, my husband and I lost our home, and I signed a 2-year lease on a garage portion of a commercial building, thinking, well, I've got about 3 weeks before he figures out I'm not good for another month. So what happened was I thought I could get volunteers and donations and whatever, but I had to become nonprofit. I had to do a build out. You have to be approved by the state vet. So this was just a tremendous undertaking that I didn't expect. So I just kept jumping through hoop, one at a time, and became state approved, became nonprofit. So I'm standing there, with help, but you have to have regular trained help. So it was just, it was an uphill battle. So in 2015, we moved everything over to a farm in Virginia Beach and rented a third of their boarding kennel, and my husband and I took an apartment upstairs. And I thought, this is going to be perfect because I live on the property, my dogs are down there, I can have 50 dogs at one time, this will be great. Well, things came to light where I could no longer recommend the facility as a boarding facility, and I was asked to leave because I can't sit by and watch the things happen that were happening. So I ended up being asked to leave as a solution to the problem. You speak up, you become the problem. So we found a building in Norfolk, and it was a building that I had my eye on for 6 years anyway. Well, it was available, but it was only for sale. So they rented it to us for 6 months. At the end of the 6 months, you either have to buy it or they're going to sell it to somebody else. So my husband said, well, I'll get us back on our feet, personally, and you get the rescue back on their feet, get them up and going, try to raise money, and you can have staff and everything that you need on this property, because it was a great property. It's a warehouse building. It's about 4,300 square feet with 8 rooms and a 2,000 square foot warehouse. It's got a yard, great potential, right? So we're doing pretty good, and my sister Molly, who's right there, she was working for me, and my son was my kennel manager, so we had 3 people. My husband was the president of the rescue. It was starting to go pretty good, and personally we were doing okay, getting back on our feet, getting better, and then COVID hit. COVID hit everyone hard across the board. I don't care who you are, what you do. COVID made your life so much more difficult. Well, most of our monthly donations just dried up immediately because people were afraid of how they were going to live and what was going to happen in their lives. So during COVID, Molly, my sister, and Tyler worked for 6 months for no pay. I've been working for 10 years for no pay, but they counted on this income for their survival. So for 6 months, they didn't get paid. And then Molly got an offer with Pet Suites and didn't want to take it because she felt committed to the rescue and our mission. So I fired her to make her go and take this job that she needed. So it just became myself and my son, and started to get back on our feet a little bit. And then my personal life unexpectedly exploded, and turned out my 21-year marriage was just a sham. So anyway, overnight, boom. Okay. So now you're knocked down again, you got to get back up, but we still haven't quite recovered from COVID as far as recovering donations, because people are still hurting from that, not knowing what their normal life is going to be.
Right. I mean, it sounds like you've been through a lot of obstacles to keep this thing running, and I think people view animal shelters with their biggest issue being, we have so many animals, we can't have any more, or we're going to have to, unfortunately, the word euthanize is what happens when they don't have enough, or they try to find other resources. But, to hear that one of the biggest problems really is just even supporting your business to even have this rescue.
Yes.
I mean, that's a pretty big issue, and I'm sure you are not the only one facing that across the country when we're talking about all the shelters and rescues.
Everyone is hurting.
And so
everyone.
I think people might have that misconception that it's really, while there are so many animals, but the shelters are doing fine. But really the shelters, as by your example, are
None
not
of
doing
them are.
fine.
None of them are. The rescues, it's difficult to begin with. Most rescues are one or two people doing the best they can with no resources. People don't realize there's only, you can count on one hand the number of rescues in the state of Virginia that have a facility. They don't realize that. And this is why: lack of help, lack of funding. And the thing is, and it's not just funding, we have 20,000 people on our Facebook page, and I'm flipping furniture to keep the lights and water on. Why is that? It doesn't make sense, but that's where we're at. And people have the misconception that when they call, they're talking to staff at the front desk, and there's kennel staff, and there's somebody to monitor the Facebook page. One person got upset today because I didn't answer her back on Facebook. I'm not able to do that. So there's just this misconception that there's all this help, and you've got staff, and you've got employees, and you've got all this room for every single dog, and everyone is doing the best that they can. Every shelter works differently. The animal controls get blamed a lot because their euthanasia numbers might be going up, but that's because owner surrenders are going up, and they're supposed to take them. So what do they do if adoptions are down, owner surrenders are up? They have to either put the dogs, I hate to say the word, but on sale to get them out the door as to not euthanize them, or they have to euthanize them. And then we're sitting here with the facility, and our numbers of dogs are down because we don't have the support to be able to take these dogs. So it's kind of a catch-22 for everyone.
Heard a lot just for individual owners that the cost of food is going up, the cost of supplies for your animals are going up.
Veterinary care.
Right.
But the veterinary field, they're understaffed now. That's why you can't get an appointment. That's why prices are going up, because they're hurting as well.
And I mean, I was just thinking in my head, so many people also got pets during COVID. It was an opportunity for them to be home. They were like, this is the time. But, unfortunately, we have seen, since COVID, either people not being able to keep those pets or others. And, the numbers have just risen for you all. And, how many calls are you getting? I mean, can you field any more calls right now? Are you at your limit in your shelter?
We're at our limit because we're having to downsize for lack of financial support and lack of help. So we're down to, I think we have 13 dogs right now, where normally we could have 30, but we have to have as many as one or two people can take care of.
And, people can't just jump in and volunteer, right?
No, and that's the thing. We would love to have volunteers, but we don't have staff. So we don't have anybody that can be with the volunteer and train them. And then to have people come often enough to be trained, there's pretty few and far between. So places that do have a good number of volunteers also have staff to be with the volunteers. Because if I had you come to the shelter and you're alone with the dogs at any point, I would lose my insurance.
Right. And people, they want to come in and they want to play with the animals or be the comfort, helper that comes. But, that's not feasible, obviously.
Yeah, for that to happen, I have to stop everything I'm doing and just sit there and not be here, or not be running the office, or not be looking for furniture to flip to keep the lights and water on. So I've had people offer to help with Facebook, but in order to do that, you have to take pictures and you have to do the write-ups, which means you have to know the dogs. And they said, well, you can take the pictures and you can do the write-ups. Well, that's the same as me posting it on Facebook, you know? So we have a couple ladies that do come once in a while and volunteer, but they live an hour away, so it's pretty few and far between. But it's so appreciated when they do come. They did a Christmas video for us. They said, hey, why don't you do this cute little Christmas video that I saw on Facebook? I was like, hey, why don't you do it? And they did. They came, and because I know their family, and they've adopted 7 or 8 Go Rescue dogs, and they know the dogs. Certain ones we couldn't put them with, but overall, we had a bunch of puppies at the time. So they put this cute little Christmas video out there, which was so helpful. I was just so relieved to be able to have something like that.
And, you know, this conversation, and we spoke about this before we started, but, you know, we're sort of pulling back the curtain, if you will, of, you know, maybe just the success stories and just the good news. But, you know, hearing really what it takes right now to keep your organization afloat. Yeah. And it's a struggle. And I think, you know, one thing this campaign does, which is great, is show the success stories and the animals and photos. But you know, the other portion of it is really about donations if you're able to. And so, I mean, if those 20,000 followers on Facebook, you know, were put into donations or were put into helping you all, I mean, that would make a huge difference, right?
Yes, and what we need the most, and people don't like to talk about it in rescue for some reason, it's the one business that people think, well, you don't have any overhead. I don't know why, but they think because we're a nonprofit and we're animal related that we don't pay for the building. We have mortgage, we have lights, we have water, we have 2 different kinds of insurances, and that kills us. So we have all these expenses. We don't get breaks. We don't typically get breaks at the vet. The Humane Society does have a rescue price, which is great, but that's gone up because of their lack of veterinarians that are available. So I would say the number one thing any rescue needs is money. If you have $5, like I said, we've got 20,000 people on our Facebook page. If everybody donated $5, then we wouldn't be, you know, contemplating putting our shelter up for sale. So, I mean, that's where we're at right now. So, and then if you want to donate supplies, ask us or ask the rescue or whatever organization you want to help, ask them what they need, because a lot of times people, they mean well and they bring in things that you don't really need. And it's usually the unfun things that we need, like bleach and paper towels, but it does help us because then we don't have to go out and spend our money buying those supplies.
Right. So you, as much as you would love the animals to have as many toys as they need or treats, it's really you all need those items to keep yourself running.
Yes, and we have so many toys. We have so many treats. We get all of that, which is a blessing because I started out with nothing. So it's a blessing that we do get that. But we do need the food. We do need and it does matter what food you get. A lot of times people mean very well and they think, well, I can buy 6 bags of food for this price or 2 bags of food for this price, but this food might give every one of your dogs digestive issues that are not very nice to deal with times, 15 dogs or whatever. So it does matter what brand it is sometimes. And for some dogs, we have some dogs that could eat rocks and be fine. And then you have some dogs, you give them one thing outside of what they normally eat, and it takes 2 days to get them back straight.
I mean, and every dog is different. I mean, I guess a good question is, what kind of dogs do you even have right now? I mean, I'm sure it's a variety of size, of ages.
I try to have, I'm not breed specific, some rescues are, and that's fine, but for me, I try to have a little bit of everything, and then it's just, I get calls every day, and we're not at a point of taking more dogs in right now, but if we took in a standard poodle several weeks ago, and it was because her owner said she's not been around other dogs. She's terrified of all other dogs. She's afraid of new situations. She's afraid of new people. And I was thinking, well, if she ends up somewhere else, she's not going to do well. in close proximity to other dogs. And then you've got this beautiful 7-month-old poodle who is deemed as not adoptable. And she's very adoptable. We just have to work with her with that issue. So we have everything from standard poodle to, we have a little Shiba Inu mix who's a year old. We do take older dogs, but right now we have dogs that have been living out their whole lives there.
Wow.
I have Willie, who's been with us for 12 years, and he came from the SPCA. They can't let him live there forever because he's taking up room that they badly need for other dogs. But he originally came from a West Virginia puppy mill. He's generationally feral. So he's like going out and trying to be friends with a very wild animal. So after all these years, he's blind and just doesn't like to be touched. And we touched him every day for 5 years, thinking, oh, he's going to like it. He's a dog. He's going to learn to like it. And then I realized he's like touching every day a very touch-sensitive, autistic person who doesn't appreciate the feeling of touch. So then I realized, oh, it's not that he doesn't like us. He doesn't like the sensation of being touched. So Willie just lives in his own little world, his own little bubble, and he runs out with the other dogs, and he stays away from them, and then he runs in with the other dogs, and he stays away from them. But so for that reason, I'm trying to only take dogs that I feel like can go out the door in a reasonable amount of time.
And are you seeing people call and wanting to adopt animals right now?
We're having a lot of people want to adopt, but since our number of available dogs are down, we don't necessarily have the right dog for everybody. We have 3 dogs in particular and their mom that we're having a very hard time with. They're cute dogs. They're about 35 pounds. They're kind of tall and lanky, but they're like having giant spider monkeys in your house. They're extremely active. They're extremely vocal. They will climb straight up your wall. We're working on that, but they're like spider monkeys in your house. And so they have the vocal thing going. They're escape artists. They're very active. And when people meet them, they're so overwhelming with their personality. They're very, very extra on all accounts. So unfortunately, they've been growing up at our shelter, and we don't want to see that, but we need to place them correctly at the same time. But I do have to say, the 3 that have been adopted have not come back. So,
Right.
So there's hope.
And I think, with the ones that are younger, I mean, training is so important too, and you seem to have such an eye and passion really for the animals that you have. Obviously, you can name them, you can talk about them, you can talk about their habits and their behaviors. You just talked about, having the dog for 12 years and not wanting to be touched, and you all working with him. So, I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, do the people come in and do they want to, figure out how to make the dogs a home? Or, you're talking about them like maybe people are coming in with a vision, of what animal they want to adopt. And
well, what I do is different just because I don't have time to show everybody every dog when I know I don't have the right dog for them. And that's the thing, is that it's not that it's a bad dog or a bad home. It just has to be the right combination. So I talk to people on the phone and find out, what are you looking for? Do you have kids? If you do, they need to be kid-friendly. Do you have other pets? Obviously, they need to be, get along with other pets if you have them. If you have little pets, they need to be not prey-driven dogs. If they're prey-driven, you can't really untrain that. So you just don't want a prey-driven dog if you've got guinea pigs. And then, are you home to house train a dog, or do you need one that's already housebroken? You can't go out and get a puppy if you're not there to house train it. So, and there are people that mean well, but what they want doesn't match their lifestyle. So what I do is, your lifestyle has to already match that dog. If I have a husky puppy and you're not an active person, but you think you're going to be because you adopt a husky puppy, that's not going to work. But if you're a runner already and you are an active person and you hike and bike and all that, then that might be the right dog for you.
Absolutely. So, we hear a lot about forever homes and finding a home, but what you do, and maybe this is unique to you, I'm not sure, we'd have to ask other shelters, but finding people that are going to keep these dogs for the long term, right? That aren't going to bring them back, that aren't going to have a problem with them, because you want a good outcome for the dog too,
and that's
and the family.
Everybody's goal, and everybody does the best that they can to get to know the dog and to place them correctly. So everybody has different criteria, and honestly, when you're dealing with human beings, sometimes you're going to be wrong. Sometimes it might be a great home, but then something happens and they can't keep the dog. or they're a great home and then one day they're just not. Or there have been people that, I've given a chance to with the dog and they've ended up being the best homes. So like one person was young and just getting married and just getting into their careers and moving and having children and all that. So I adopted a dog to them and microchipped her to myself so I could keep a close eye on her. They kept her for her entire life, through moves, through children,
Wow.
through everything. So then when they came back for another dog, all I had to do was make sure that I had one that was a good fit for them. But I already know what kind of home they are. So that's one of the biggest reasons why people call me to take their own dogs, is there's this misconception of, I'm going to get this dog as a very young puppy, and it's going to acclimate to me, no matter what breed it is. And that is not true. If you get a shepherd and you don't have time to acclimate that dog into 95% of your life, it's not going to work out. Because when you get a shepherd and they hit maturity, you are their job, period. Or a Malinois. You'll see a lot of Malinois in the hands of people that shouldn't have. I shouldn't have one. I can't incorporate it into my life to the point that they need. Or a Husky. If you get a Husky, 9 times out of 10, they're going to act like a Husky. They're that dog that you get home from work and you're like, how are you on my house? So you're going to have that dog that, I tell people, if you look at the lost and found pages, it's going to be a lot of scent hounds, a lot of shepherds, and a lot of sled dogs. Because they're driven, they're smart, they're problem solvers. If they want to get out, they're going to figure it out. So my Cane Corso just learned how to open doors.
Oh my gosh.
Luckily, not the front door, but she can open doors and just go wherever she wants. So
Right. So people
they
need
will
to
figure it out.
understand the time and effort. It's not just, oh, that's a pretty dog. Oh, I like the style of that
Yeah,
dog.
not
There's
at
so
all.
much more
Not at
personality
all.
and even, I guess, innate, qualities of some of these animals that you
Yes.
have to think about.
yes, you need to know the breed, but then take that individual dog into account too. You might have that Husky, and you're not going to be able to see it as a puppy, but you might have that Husky that isn't super active or an escape artist or, a runner, but probably not. You just need to look at the breed and know what the breed's tendencies are. And if the dog is in a shelter or in a rescue, especially if they're 6 months or older and there's one person consistently with the dog, ask that person about everything they know. Because you can have this perfectly nice looking dog that's well behaved until you reach for their food. Well, that dog shouldn't go in a home with kids at all. And you can work with them on that, but they're still going to have that tendency if a child comes up while they're eating. So you might not see the issues, but whoever spends most of their time with the dog will know more about it than somebody at the front desk, or even than you. I'll have people say, well, that looks just like a dog I had when I was growing up, therefore I want that dog.
Right.
Well, this dog is very different from the dog you had when you were growing up. They might look the same, but it's a very different temperament and personality.
And then, what do you say to people who are looking to adopt, not even adopt, but, to purchase a dog from a breeder or something? I mean, are there so many dogs that need to be rescued that really, in your opinion, is that where the focus should be? Does it depend on the family? Do some families need to have a dog that they've nurtured, from that 8-week period or so?
I've had people that think if I get a dog as a puppy, I can control its total temperament and personality, and you can't. I've had people want Chihuahua puppies, and I say when they hit maturity, not all of them, but a lot of them will not like anybody outside of their home because they're very much pack animals. I had a Chihuahua that was good with everyone. I could take her places and pass her around. That's not typical for a Chihuahua. So even if you get them as a puppy, so there's this one lady that had kids in the house, and I said, might get used to your children, but then your children are going to have friends over. When it hits maturity, you might have an issue. So she went somewhere else and got a Chihuahua. Well, 12 months later, guess where the Chihuahua ended up? With me, for the exact reason that I told her. Now, you might find that one that isn't that way. I got one from animal control, and they didn't even want to take him out of the cage. He was so fractious, but he was terrified. And there's nothing they could do. He was just terrified. So I gave him the time and space to decompress a little bit, and then he ended up having such an unusually good temperament that he ended up being the therapy dog for 2 preteen autistic children that very badly needed a pet. And I would have never thought it would be that one, but he had that kind of temperament. But part of the reason he was so bad at animal control was that he was very sensitive to the energies around him, and he was overwhelmed. And you cannot overwhelm a Chihuahua and expect that they're going to act well.
So, I mean, what are your tips for people who, you know, they want to help out, they see the numbers, or maybe they're just in the market to adopt a pet, and, you know, they're coming to different shelters around Hampton Roads? I mean, is it about being honest with themselves and what they can handle at that moment? Is it about, you know, communicating with people like you about what animals you have? I mean, what should people look out for right now?
Well, the first thing that people really should do is look at their lifestyle. Do you have children? Do you have other pets? What are your other pets? Are you home? Are you not home enough? Are you able to bring your dog with you places or not? And then you need to trust the word of the people at the shelter or the rescue. If they're saying that dog that you're interested in is not going to be a good fit for you, it's not a personal thing. It's just their job, and my job is to find the right home for the dog and the right dog for you. And if we're telling you it's not the right dog, it's not to offend you. It's that this dog has certain needs. Like the last standard poodle that we had was very work-minded and very active. And I turned people away who lived in apartments and condos because even if you were a runner, it's not enough for this dog. And if you've had a poodle before that was lazy, that's fine, but this one wasn't. So I even had a friend who came to me and said, my parents are interested in her. And at first I said, I don't think they can handle this particular one. And they said, you know, my parents have 15 acres. Well, that's a game changer.
Right.
So she went there, and as long as she's out on the 15 acres and she can run, then she's more well-behaved when she goes in the house because she's been running for 3 hours. So I posted on Facebook, I did a little TikTok thing, and it was a cartoon poodle with a bow and what you expect, and it said perception, and then it said reality, and it cut to this actual dog running back and forth in a 15-foot long mud puddle, going like this, back and forth, back, and I put motorcycle noises to it. So you're like, you want that in your apartment? So,
well, that's a perfect example of what you've been talking about.
Yes.
Perception, what you dream of, what you said when you have an idea of what you had as a kid. You know, that is not always going to be the outcome.
No, my mother-in-law had a poodle that looked very much like that one. She was a little older when she got her, but her energy level was non-existent. She was just very lazy and very sweet and very timid, so she was the opposite of that. So I could see where if somebody had her, they'd go, oh, she kind of looks like this one, so I want her. But they don't realize she's like, you know, so extra. So she uses up every inch of that 15 acres every day.
And then in terms of care, I mean, we talked about, you know, the first tip, you know, being honest with yourself, knowing what your environment is like at home. But, you know, it is a lot of work as well, as we talked about, to take care of the animal, from veterinary costs to food to, you know, emergencies that pop up. I mean, what would you say to somebody in that way? Because you all want these to be success stories. You want the animal to go to a home and live there forever. But, I mean, do you see anyone come in that's not ready for that whole responsibility?
I talk to people every day that are not ready for that responsibility. A lot of them are trying to give me their dog for that reason. And some people realize it. And, you know, I don't mind it when somebody calls and says, look, I took this animal on and I had no business doing that, as long as you don't do it again. And then some people just blame the dog. But I talk to people every day that aren't ready for their responsibility. And I'll have people that call me and say, I want a dog. I don't care what it is. You don't care if it's a Yorkie or a 150-pound German Shepherd? No. That's usually the sign. Now, Don't take it personally, because there are some people, if you lived out and you had acreage, it might not matter what kind of dog you get. It might not matter. But typically that's not the case, and it does matter. So for me, a lot of times if somebody says, I don't care what kind of dog it is, and they don't even say, but it needs to have this temperament or it needs to be good with kids, I just don't care what it is, that's somebody that's probably not going to be invested in keeping the dog for its whole life anyway. I mean, I can get a dog temporarily and just throw it away whenever I'm tired of it or it's overwhelming or whatever. So I'll have people apologize for being too picky. And, you know, you can be a little too picky if you're like, it's got to have this certain spot on its face or whatever. But for the most part, if somebody says, this is my criteria, I like that, because that means you've thought about it and you're really looking for a long-term family member. And, you know, I'll have people call me that have children. I can hear them in the background, and those are their kids, and they don't even say, I want a dog that's kid-friendly. So you need to think about what will work for you. And a lot of times, the dog that's the perfect dog for you might not come in the package that you expected. It's kind of like dating. Yeah, that's a different story. I want to talk about that. But the last dog I had, actually, and this is going to be unpopular, but I don't care. The last dog I had that had such a good temperament that I temperament tested other dogs with him off leash, because he would not react no matter what, was a red-nosed pit named Hank.
Wow.
Took him out of
well, that will throw some people's
Henrico County Animal
out.
Control, actually, and I didn't have him as a puppy. Henrico Animal Control called me and said, this dog is too scared to be here. And it turned out he was too scared to be there because he was such a mellow dog, and it was an overwhelming environment for him. So I knew he was going to be a good dog, but not to the point that he was. But he got adopted about 6 months ago, I guess. And he really is the last dog that we've had that could be in any situation with any dog, any person. You could trust him 100%. And no, I'm not saying they're all that way, but none of any breed is going to be that way. You have to look at them individually as well.
And I imagine, right, that there are instances that people aren't thinking this carefully, right, about where the animal is placed. So is this unique for you? I mean, I hope not, obviously, but it seems that
everybody has different criteria. Like there's shelters that are not really allowed to turn you away if you want a dog, but they can try to steer you in a different direction. But there's shelters that are just not allowed to say you can't have this dog. And then there's shelters that can say that, but they have guidelines. But I mean, they'll try to do what's right for the dog every time. This is also a misconception that people have. I'll have people come in and they'll talk bad about this shelter or that shelter or animal control or whatever. Everyone is doing the best they can. And everybody that works at places like that has guidelines that they have to go by. And some of the guidelines they agree with, some of them they don't. But if that's your job, you have to go by the guidelines. But everyone working in the animal industry, animal control or veterinary or any of that, we all care about the animals. We don't want your animals. I can't imagine having a shelter where I have to take every person's animal that tries to dump them on me and then try to get these out. That's why they end up just saying, here, take these animals, or they have to euthanize, and then they're ostracized by the community for putting them out there cheaply or euthanizing them. But the problem isn't the facility, the problem is the community. If everybody just got the right dog, committed to the dog, didn't breed their dogs to make more of them, and just committed to their own dog. Your dog should not be my responsibility for the entire life of that dog. It's your responsibility. And I can't imagine having to be responsible for everyone's dog that they wanted to dump on me.
Absolutely. And, you know, I just wanted to give you, I guess, a closing moment, if you will. You know, I've really enjoyed this conversation and hearing about this, because I think about adopting, but don't think about all this process. But I mean, if there's anything you want people to take away, whether it's for this month, whether it's going into the year, whether they're thinking of adopting or thinking of hopefully helping to donate either supplies or money, I mean, what do you want them to know? Because it's not all rainbows, but at the same time, you know, these are animals, and you want them to find a successful home as much as much as the family. But I mean, is there anything else that you sort of want to share to people during this month especially?
I think the biggest thing is anybody that works in the animal industry, give us a break. We're doing the best that we can. And also, if you'd like to help, the one thing everyone needs is money. You can't have water unless you can pay for it. You can't have electricity unless you can pay for it. You can't stay in your building unless you can pay for it. You can't take the dog to the vet unless you can pay for it. And if everyone even, I think they think if they only have $5 or $10 to donate, it doesn't matter. But it does when enough people do that. So donate $5, give up a coffee, donate $5, commit to $5 a month or whatever. It really does help when enough people care to do it. I think they think if I can't do this grand gesture that it doesn't matter. People are saying if I win the lottery, I'll rescue all these animals. Well, that's what we're trying to do, but we need help. And with 20,000 people on our Facebook page, it shouldn't be one person flipping furniture to keep the lights and water on, but ask every shelter, what can I do for you? What do you need? And it's probably going to be things that you don't want to buy, paper towels and bleach and food and things like that, but that is what we need, and that will help us not having to spend the electric bill money on food or bleach. So it really does help. And even going on Facebook and, commenting can help a little bit, but sharing it or tagging people saying, look, this dog might work for you really does help.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you've given such great tips, throughout this, whether it's calling a shelter or rescue and asking what to donate,
Yes.
whether it's being honest with yourself about what kind of animal you want and it's best for your family and what animal is best for you. So, I mean, I think these are a lot of great tips that people can take with them, if they're in the market or thinking about it in the future. I mean, just knowing that, I guess rescues and shelters are really doing the best they can.
Everyone.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, Georgia, thank you so much. And I think, do you just want to give, the ad or where you all are located or, how to donate if people are able to? Should they go to your website?
Well, if you go on our website, which is gorescuedogs.com, or our Facebook page is Go Rescue Pet Adoption Center. We also have Venmo, we have Cash App, we have all these different ways of donating. But the website and Facebook page is probably the best way to do it.
And should they just give you a call? Should they post? What's the best way to see what they should donate if they're supplies?
It's calling. I get so many Facebook messages a day, and this is really bad. But I can't.
there's time,
I can't read them all. I can't answer them all, and then people get upset because they feel ignored. We don't have staff, so if you call me, I can usually pick up the phone or a text. I will see. Otherwise, I'm probably not going to see it because I'm drowning right now.
Well, we want you to focus on the animals.
Yes,
So, I mean,
yes.
you heard it from Georgia. Go to the website, give a call if you're able to donate, and that will also be available on wavy.com as well as other shelters that are a part of the campaign this month. So they'll be able to
Yes.
find all your information.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you,
Yeah, I
and
enjoyed it.
hope maybe at least one adoption will come from this. We'll see, but hopefully
Everyone counts.
exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.